Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Before we get started today, I just wanted to let everybody know that we've created the Symphony POS Support Facebook group. This is a free group that anybody can join where you can ask questions about Symphony or Oracle hospitality products in general. So if you're interested, I'll leave a link to it in the description below. We would love to have you as part of our group. And with that small announcement out of the way, today I wanted to talk about enterprise organization, the different levels we have in Symphony. And these are the ones that you see here on the left. The EMC level refers to the location where an EMC module is configured. As you know, there are 4 different levels in EMC, and 3 of them are the ones that we use the most. So I wanted to take the time and kind of discuss a little bit in detail about these different levels and kind of talk about best practices and how it's best to use them. So the first level, the top one, is the one here is the enterprise level, and then just underneath it we have the different properties. So that's going to be our property level, and underneath each property we have different revenue centers. Now the 4th level is the zone, and this is this yellow one here, and we can actually have zones between the enterprise and properties, or we can have zones between the properties and revenue centers. We can actually insert zones wherever we need to. Zones are not absolutely necessary, and most locations do not use them. They're just a way to make life easier when you have a really massive enterprise and you're trying to create multiple zone levels, maybe for menu items or for tax purposes or for any other purposes that you might need. And of course, some of the modules here on the right can be found at all levels in Symphony, meaning we can find them at the enterprise level, property, RVC, everything else, like menu item maintenance, for example. Menu item classes is another good example of that. And then some are defined only at one of the levels. For example, the roles, which are here on the right, are only defined at the enterprise level, because typically enterprises keep their employee role standard across all the restaurants. But something like taxes is defined here at the enterprise level, but most often we see it defined at the property level, because taxes in different locations are different based on your state and municipality. Also, workstations, we can only find these at the property level. So workstations and printers are going to be unique for each restaurant, because one might have 5, one might have 20, and one might have just 1. Some items that are unique to the revenue center level are order devices, which are going to be defined individually, or tables, since we have differences between the tables at the bar and the tables in the restaurant. So with modules like tables, order devices, printers, and workstations, it's pretty straightforward. They can only be defined at that particular level. But what about items that are at multiple levels, such as menu items or menu item classes? These can be at any of the levels in Symphony. Where should you define them? Well, my best advice is to take a look at your enterprise first. Is your enterprise going to be a single one-off store? You could consider adding them at the enterprise level, such as how I have them defined here. But are you planning on expanding in the future? And is the new concept going to be identical to the one you already have? So is it going to be 2 identical restaurants or pretty close to each other, where you only have to change maybe a price or something like that? Then you can still have them at the enterprise level. But if you are going to add another location that is completely different, then you might consider adding your menu items at the property level. Just know that it's going to be a little bit more difficult to maintain them, and you will have to be cautious not to use the same numbers for the different properties. So what do I mean by that? I'm going to open menu item maintenance, and I'm going to click search here, and you see the numbers that they have. When at position number 1001, if I have a pastry basket at one of the restaurants, but at the same position, if I have an oatmeal, then reporting and analytics is not going to be happy about that, because it actually looks at the position number, not at the name. So you're going to have both of these items kind of recording one on top of the other. So if you do have to have menu items at property level or RVC level, make sure they have individual numbers so your reporting stays accurate across the enterprise. Next, let's talk about inheritance and overrides and the whole reason why we have this entire structure. The main reason is because information added here at the enterprise level will be available at the property level and RVC level. Basically, the information flows down all the way to the RVC level. And underneath the RVCs will be the workstations themselves, of course. So if I add a menu item here at the enterprise level, they will be available all the way down. But if I add a menu item here at the revenue center level, then this property will not see that. So information does not flow up, it only flows down. So that's kind of our inheritance. And the different types of inheritance that we are gonna see in Symphony are gonna be, let's take a look at this one, says define here, and then zone location is enterprise. And you're gonna see that the whole line is white. That means I can make changes here. And basically it means that this is where the menu item is defined. But if I open the same module at the property level, for example, we're gonna see that all of these lines are gray, and it says that this is not defined here anymore, that it's actually inherited. So this information flows from the enterprise level down to the property level. And if I open it at the revenue center level, it will say the same thing. So we have our pastry basket, and the same, it says it's inherited from the enterprise level. So if you're trying to figure out where a menu item is defined, the best way to do this is to open it from the lowest level, which is the RVC level. And why do I say that? Because in order to make a change, for example, to this menu item, let's say that I would like to change the price for the restaurant to be different from the price in the bar, then in order to do that, I cannot right now. You can see this is gray and the system is not allowing me to make any changes. So the way to make a change is by creating an override. So in order to create an override, all I have to do is right click here at the end, and then I select override record. And now I have two options: to use an existing record or to create a blank record. I always choose use existing record because it's gonna keep all the values that I have selected. And then it's giving me a confirmation window. I'm just gonna answer yes. And now if you take a look, the module is no longer gray, it's actually white. And then we change this inheritance type from inherited to define here overriding. So if you see overriding, that means that this is actually defined at a different level above, but we created an override here. So now we can proceed with our price change. So if I would like to make this $5, for example, I can just change it to 5 and then save. Now we can do this, of course, and create as many overrides as we need to, but I suggest keeping overrides to a minimum. Because, for example, now this particular revenue center operates on its own. So whatever changes I make back here at the enterprise level, if I make this price change to $7 and then save, then if I go back to my RVC level, even if I refresh, then the price will still stay at $5 because this overriding stays in the way. It kind of operates on its own and it doesn't care about the changes that we make above. Now, this is a simple change, so you may notice it, but imagine if your entire database that probably has thousands of menu items in it, if you have overrides all over the place at all different levels. For some you may have for the definitions because you wanted to change the screen lookup, or maybe you wanted to change the print class for this one, and you have overrides all over the place, then you're not going to remember all of them, and you're just going to sit there and then make a change, and in one place it's going to work, in another place it doesn't work, and then that's because the second one has an override to it. So you're gonna sit around and just kind of look and hunt for overrides and ask yourself, why did I make this change and the workstations are not seeing it? So my advice is to keep overrides to a minimum, and if you can, keep track of the overrides of where you have them. So if multiple people are programming, like yourself and your colleague is making different changes to the menus or anywhere else in EMC, then make sure you decide together, okay, we're gonna program everything at the property level or the enterprise level, and if we do need to make an override, then we'll make a note of it and make sure that everybody's aware of it. So now that we spoke about overrides, the question is, how do we remove it? if we need to get this back to inherited, if I right click and go here, you see there's no unoverride, like the override record is already gone. Well, the funny thing is, in order to remove this is by deleting it. So what happens here at this level, when we do create an override, it's not the same record. It's a strange system that they implemented here in Symfony. Basically what happens is when we do create an override, we create a copy of the same record at this level. So it's not the original one. The original one still exists there and it's still inherited, but it's kind of hidden below it, right? So the $7 price change that we made here is just underneath this one somewhere, buried in programming. So in order to bring that one back, all we have to do is delete this one. I know this is a strange way to remove the override, but that's how the system works. So now it's giving me a confirmation window, so I'm gonna say yes. So now you see my record is not gone. Pretty much what happened is the inherited level came back from where it was hiding there underneath my override. So let's take a look at another example of an override here at the restaurant level. I'm gonna go to my definition records. And of course, as we will know, the menu item maintenance of any menu item has 3 areas. There's the master record, where we have the reporting, where we have our major group and family group. Then we have the definition record, where we have the name, the menu item class, where it's gonna print and which screen lookup it appears on, and then the price, where we just have the price defined generally. And the dependency on this one is just the same hierarchy as we saw with the enterprise. The prices are attached to the definitions, and we can have multiple prices with a definition. The definitions are attached to the master records, and again, we can have multiple definitions for one master record. And you might ask, like, why would we have multiple definitions? For example, if we would want a menu item to appear under 2 screens, instead of creating 2 separate menu items, we can just have the same menu item reporting as just one item, because we don't want to see pastry basket multiple times in our reports. Then we would create multiple definitions and just add different screen lookups. And I want you to understand this dependency, because this is something that I see very often that happens, a mistake that a lot of people make when making changes. And making overrides at the definition record is probably one of the most common one I see, because people need to change menu item class, or where an item prints, or maybe where a screen lookup. So let's take this example. Right now, my pastry basket is shown on the breakfast screen. So I would like to change that for the restaurant level, and I'm gonna go and create an override, and I'm gonna say use existing record, as I always do. I click yes on my confirmation window, and now my menu is white and it says that it's overriding, and now I can make changes. So I want to change it from the breakfast to the breakfast sides. I'm gonna click OK, and then I'm gonna save my changes. So I'm gonna go to the workstation and see if that worked. And here we are at the workstation, and I'm gonna click a quick update just to make sure I got everything down. And I'm gonna begin a fast transaction, and I'm gonna go to my breakfast area. And here under breakfast, I should have pastry basket, so it's not under breakfast. And if you remember, I moved it here under sides, but if we take a look here, I only see potato sides. There's no other P item. So let's go back to EMC and take a look at what happened. So we're back in EMC, and the reason why I always give this example is because I see this mistake done a lot of times, and it's not necessarily a mistake, it's just the way they program this is so weird and it's not intuitive at all. Basically what happened is, if you recall when I was talking about it earlier, when we create an override, we don't actually have the same record. We create an exact copy that kind of goes over the inherited item. So when we did create this new copy of the definition, if you recall when I was talking about the hierarchy and I said prices belong to the definitions, but when we created the copy, we only created a copy of the definition. So the price of the original item that was attached to that definition doesn't exist anymore. And that's why we don't see that item there. If I go to the prices record here, you're not gonna see, you only see it starts with fruit and berries. but here under definition, we do have pastry basket on top of it. So remember, whenever you're making an override to the definition, remember to always recreate its price. So if I open this and I go to prices, you see there is nothing here. So that's why I see this happen so often, where people create an override for this item and then they say, oh, I've created an override and I've broken it, it doesn't work anymore. So the reason why it's not there is because we don't have a price sequence for it. So I can enter the price and now we have this price here. All we have to do is go to our workstation and test. So we're gonna click a quick update as always, re-sign in, begin our transaction, go to the breakfast area, go to the sides, and now we have our pastry basket for $6 as we added it. So always keep that in mind. Careful when you're doing overrides on definitions to always recreate the price. So now if we would like to remove this, we will try and delete it just as we did before. And you want to proceed, yes. And we're getting this error. It says the following record cannot be deleted because they are associated with an open close check from the current day. The record is not deleted. So that's something that is also very annoying to me, and why I don't really like making overrides specifically for menu items is because for the definitions and the master records, we will not be able to remove them once we made them for menu items that have already been used. So this override will be here and we won't be able to remove it at the moment. So be very careful. If you do need to make overrides, make sure that they're absolutely necessary and then you keep track of them. The final thing that I want to talk about is about configuring permission and visibility for your managers. So if we go back to the home page, I'm going to go to the employees maintenance area, and then I'm going to click a search to populate my database. And then let's take a look at one of the managers we have here. And we're going to take a look at the role. And I'm gonna click here on the employee record, and we can see on the roles, we have the zone for the role, and then we have EMC visibility. So what this does is basically we can select which role the employee will have and at which zone. So if you need to limit an employee role to a particular zone, we can tell them that this employee can only do specific functions in this restaurant, or maybe only in this revenue center. And then if that employee also has access to EMC, then we can change their visibility if needed. For example, if you don't want your floor managers to make any changes to the enterprise level, then you can just give them visibility only to the property level or to the revenue center level, whatever they need to in order to do whatever they need to do in EMC. And if they don't need access all the way at the top, then they shouldn't have it anyway. Now, this is going to be different from the reporting section. So in reporting, you can give them different organization levels so they can have access to the whole enterprise or a particular revenue center as well. And finally, I want to take a look also at the roles. And again, the roles are going to be at the enterprise level and roles. And then if I'm going to open this role, and here under EMC modules, we can take a look at what they can do. So they can add, edit, delete, and add override. Remember we were talking about you can right click and then select create override. If your employee role does not allow you to create an override, that means you are not allowed by the role here. And then you may or may not have the role to delete specific items, meaning to remove the override as well. So if you have limited access, then you might need to change your role, and you do need to create overrides. Make sure you have a role that it permits this add override. And then if you do want to give access to one of your managers, but you do not want them to create overrides or delete stuff, then you can just kind of go module through module. I'm just using global access for this particular role, but if you take a look at a manager level, then you can just remove global access and go from each individual module. So we can take a look here at menu items, for example, menu item masters, and we can say they're not allowed to delete, they're not allowed to create overrides, but they are allowed to view and edit and probably add as well. So this is how you would configure it if you want to give them particular access. I'm gonna leave mine the way it is and just go ahead and save. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave it a big thumbs up and subscribe for more content. Let me know in the comments below what videos you would like to see in the future, and remember to join our free Facebook group. And I'll see you all next time.